First off, anyone from Boston from the 80s knows that V66 destroys MTV. And this goes out to you, John Garabedian. This is original, unwashed, probably 1984 V66 shirt. He'll be like, oh, it was actually 1985. Boston, 24 hours, 7 days of the week. Not over cable, over the air. Remember that before you had to get, remember how they said, I want my MTV? Because MTV at one point was not as big as V66. Believe it or not. So if you lived in Boston and you wanted to watch Aerosmith or you wanted to watch the Jay Giles Band, you tuned into V66 for free without the cables. Do you see this? We're just going to talk about what makes Martin the best. We're going to rapid fire through some freaking amazing Martins throughout the decades. Because, well, I got a bunch of really cool ones right here. Starting with this 2001, I believe, D45 Golden Era, which means that it was made exactly like they did during the Golden Era of Martin. In fact, this is a 1939 D45 reissue, basically, because it has the snowflake inlays, aptly named Martin. Good job. And it has real Brazilian rosewood back and sides. And it's a D45, which means that your dick is 45 times bigger than any other guitarist in the room. Thanks, Kamal. Thanks, Kamal. What do we got here? Oh! This one's pretty. This is probably the hardest guitar I ever tried to find because it's the Paul Simon 0042, and I think they made like 35 of them or something like that, but I looked for this for 20 years with my buddy, and we just couldn't find one, and then we found two, so we got both. And it's basically just the 0042, but Paul Simonized with the snowflake inlays. Again, apt, Martin. Thank you, Kamal, you're very nice. This is the nicest D28 that I have ever personally played. It's a 1955. I went back to Hill Valley High School with Doc Brown and the DeLorean to 1955. And I got this guitar. This is basically, if you want a Martin that's just Adirondack spruce and it has the Brazilian rosewood back and sides and it's just nice and simple and just means business, it's the D28. And this one's the best. Thanks, Kamal. Next, we have a 1942 D18. So where that is a D28, cost $28. This was $18 because it had the much cheaper, but yet still totally amazing mahogany. Very cool. 1942. Thanks. And here's the last one. The rarest of them all. Very strange. So this is a 1930 021S. It's an orchestra size 021. So if you've seen the normal 021s, this is kind of like pushed together and slightly fatter. But what's so cool about this guitar is two things. One, it has these ridiculous banjo-style tuners that are very, very hard to tune. And in fact, I had to sit there with screwdrivers trying to make these tighter so they actually held pitch, but they do. And two, I believe it's the first Martin acoustic to ever beat 14 frets to the body instead of 12 frets. So my 1929 Epiphone, number 4, I believe may be the first 14 fret to the body acoustic because it's a 29. But this is, according to Martin, the first one they ever did was 1930, the 021S, and they only made 3. And here's one of them. Here's one of them with the beautiful Brazilian rosewood back and sides. And it still plays. And as you can see, no matter how awesome these guitars are, they can't make me sound good. Okay. So one of the number one comments I get on any video is he really banging his jewelry against that guitar? See this? See that? See that? Helps if I take off my long ladder. See that? Can't take off the sunglasses because the sun never sets on a player. I respect this guitar so much. Nothing. This is truly one of my favorite conquests ever because not only did I get this guitar for a silly good deal, but it is probably just my personal all-around favorite guitar ever made by Martin. Ladies and gentlemen, what we have here is one of the rarest Martins, one of two ever made. That is the beginning of the history of what made Martin famous. This is the prototype 0042 from 1902. This is 119 years old, all original prototype 0042. And to give you an idea, Eric Clapton, when he played the Unplugged show, was playing an OM 42. Paul Simon, 0042. So many famous guitar players started off when they got their best guitar, they got a 0042. This started it all. So back in the day, when Gibson was making the Style O for $300, Martin's like, maybe we'll push the limits and make something that's $42 because we're crazy and living on the edge. So where Gibson made like a little scroll and put a bunch of weird wood, Martin's like, why don't we just make it look unfucking believable? So first off, you guys are probably going, what the hell is this? Great question. This is a mandolin style pickguard. You've never seen one? That's because for a very small period of time in the early 20th century, some guitars had this. And this is the most opulent one I've ever seen from Martin. Now down here, made of solid ivory, are not only the bridge, the pyramid bridge as they call it, because you have like little pyramids cut out of here, but you have a floating saddle, okay? That's cut out of the same piece of ivory that's been sitting there for 119 years. And you have all the tuning pegs are made, again, of the same piece of ivory with abalone inlaid in them. That's wild. I mean, all from the same piece of ivory. This is, I took this off and I restrung it and I was like, what the hell? I'm like, did this fall out? No. Like my special number 4 from Epiphone, this actually has a floating saddle that fits perfectly in like a glove into this. 119 years later. I'm just going to keep saying that because it blows my mind. But this is literally the example of what beautiful guitar craftsmanship in the early 20th century looked like. Because you have this wonderful Adirondack spruce top. You have this million ply binding with abalone and herringbone, and it's all around the guitar, and you have this fancy marquetry work down the middle, which Martin was famous for, and this beautiful, beautiful, beautiful straight grain Brazilian rosewood. Now, I don't think that there's a magic tonal combination, but if you're gonna have a guitar and you wanna know what like the old school Martins sound like, Adirondack spruce and Brazilian rosewood are just the best. And this is one of the greatest examples from this time period, because to be able to play a guitar that's this old and it still plays as well as it does is kind of bananas. I have a 1912 021 and it plays pretty well, but it didn't have a neck reset. This one did. So the cool thing about this guitar is that it's actually playable from top to bottom. It was done at Norm's Rare Guitars. So it was done right and it's unbelievable, but it makes something like this playable. You can't call it all original because it had a neck reset if you're looking at a Martin from this time period, but that's kind of like changing the oil in your car and expecting your Ferrari to drive like 70 years later without changing the oil. That's kind of how I look at it. But I never had my guitar fixed because, again, I had a lot of Martin people tell me, don't do that. It's all original. But because they did, still in tune from last night. Now, one of the things is, I know there's some Martin people going, what the flippity fuck? There's steel strings on this guitar. Yeah, there are. I absolutely hate silk and steel. And this is originally what they call a gut string guitar. So it's supposed to have, gut strings on this, which basically makes it a classical guitar. Gut strings were actually made from guts back in the day. And this had classical strings on it when it came from Norm's Rare Guitars. But I'm playing it, and I don't like the sound as much as I like of steel strings. So I've converted them sometimes where I'll detune them, and I use super, super, super light gauge strings because I just think the sound of steel strings are better. For me, I have some older guitars that there's no question keep classical strings on it. But this guitar, that's like that glassy presence, that mid bass. You can almost feel the bass coming from the guitar. It just has this, I guess the way I look at it is it has this crisp sound, like deliciously cold apple cider on a summer day. And it's one of those guitars that you start playing it, especially the finger picking, because this is a parlor guitar. And I have to say that these tuning pegs that are made of solid mother of pearl, and anyone that knows me knows I like dead mollusk, okay? I love it, solid. And these tuners are better than some of the modern day tuners. They're just, it's like, why do all my other ones just like, yeah? And these are just like nice and smooth and they're like tight. It's amazing. In fact, Jim, let's take it over here. I want to take it to my reverb corner. I want you guys to hear this in my special area. This is literally a guitar that, even though there might be modern guitars where you're like, oh, that's easier to play, or this is just a guitar that you look at it and you go, somebody put a lot of time, a lot of love, and this became the symbol of the best from Martin, who many believe to be the best. So this is the best of the best from the best of the best during the best of the best. Everything about this, from the straight grain Brazilian rosewood, to the fact that it's ivory, all carved, separate pieces, but from one piece. All of this beautiful inlay. And they only made 2 of them in 1902. The prototype 0042 from Martin. The guitar that changed the world of everything acoustic.